Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Jitu Mishra from Virasat-e-Hind Foundation, Ahmedabad. I am going to present about Malwa Sultanate, which was a series of dynasties ruled from Malwa Plateau in central India in today's Madhya Pradesh region. Mandu was the capital of the Malwa Sultanate, which is located in a picturesque plateau on the offshoot of Vindhyan Hills in central India. It was the glorious capital of Malwa Sultanate that ruled in 15th and 16th century CE before its subjugation to the Mughal Empire. During the rule of Malwa Sultanate, Mandu was referred to as the city of joy, and it was celebrated as a magnificent city for its art, culture, and medieval water management system. So Malwa Sultanate, it was not just one sultanate, it was actually consisting of four dynasties. To begin with, it was the Ghuri dynasty that ruled from 1401 to 1436 CE. Dilawar Khan, who was the founder of the Ghuri dynasty, ruled from 1401 to 1406 only for 5 years. He was followed by his successor Husam Uddin Hosang Shah, who ruled from 1406 to 1432, and during his period the Sultanate had spread from its core to a large area consisting of Malwa Plateau, part of northern Deccan, eastern Gujarat, and today's Chhattisgarh region. So it was a large dynasty, and he was followed by Tajuddin Muhammad Sawan. He ruled from 1432 to 1436 CE. After that, there was another dynasty called Khilji dynasty, which ruled from 1436 to 1531. Alauddin Muhammad Shawan was its founder. He ruled from 1436 to 1469. He was followed by his successor Ghiyasuddin Shah, who ruled from 1469 to 1500. Nasiruddin Shah, 1500 to 1510, was the third ruler of the dynasty, and the last one was Shihabuddin Muhammad Shah II, who ruled from 1510 to 1531. And then there was a period of interregnum where Bahadur Shah, the Sultan of Gujarat, who had conquered Malwa, ruled from 1531 to 1537 CE, and Humayun, who was the Mughal emperor, had ruled from 1535 to 1536. Again, there were a group of rulers. They are called the later rulers of Malwa Sultanate, starting with Qadir Shah, 1537 to 1542 was the ruler, and he was followed by Suja Khan, the governor of Shah Shuri. He was actually, and then the last ruler of the dynasty was Baz Bahadur, who ruled from 1555 to 1561 CE. So Mandu, as we say, is the capital of the Malwa dynasty, Malwa Sultanate. It has got some of the magnificent buildings of medieval period and representing Afghan style of architecture, Iranian style of architecture, and also Hindu Rajput style of architectures. So some of these monuments, especially Hosang Sa stones, for example, was the first building in India which was built out of completely marble, and that became a source of inspiration for Shahjahan to build Taj Mahal at Agra. So history of Malwa Sultanate, let's start with that. So Mandu was one of the last strongholds of Parmar kings. So before it was the Malwa Sultanate, it was a stronghold of Parmar kings in 30th century CE. They were the Hindu rulers who had established a stronghold in the region of Mandu, had built a large number of temples, which you find the remains in and around Mandu and in Dhar, which was the first capital of Malwa Sultanate before it was Mandu was made the capital. The Islamic rule was formally established by Dilawar Khan in 1400 CE at Dhar, which is about 20 kilometers from Mandu, and he was the governor of Malwa during the reign of Muhammad Shah Tughlaq. He built two grand mosques at Dhar and one at Mandu, reusing the architectural elements of Hindu temples. So you see the temple pillars they are basically parts of Hindu temples which have been reused and then, but you also at the same time you see the arch as well as the dome, which are of typical Islamic styles. So these were the two monuments built, at one at Dhar and the other one at Mandu. They were the earliest ones in the region of Malwa of Islamic culture, Islamic architecture, and and both were built by Dilawar Khan. So he died in 1405 C and was succeeded by his son Hosang Shah. So Hoshang Shah was the one who shifted the capital to a higher elevation at Mandu because of its picturesque setting. It was also joyful, enjoyable because of its weather. It's in a higher altitude, and secondly, it was also strategically located from the defense point of view. So that is why Mandu was chosen as the capital city of Hoshang Shah or the Malwa Sultanate. Then he ruled almost for 27 years, and he was a great builder. So he fortified the city with a strong fortification wall, and then he also built a large number of monuments, and some of the most important are the Jami Masjid and his own tomb. The first made completely out of white marble were his creations. As I said before, the tomb of Hosang Shah was the first monument in India which is made out of completely marble, which became a source of inspiration for Shah Jahan to build Taj Mahal using again white marble. Hosang Shah died in 1432 CE. After his death, Hosang Shah, there was a political chaos. His successor Ghazni Khan was murdered by Mahmud Khalji. Mahmud declared himself as the new ruler in 1436 CE. He ruled for 30 years, and Malwa reached to its zenith during his rule. So he was also a great warrior, and he built a large number of monuments, including his own tomb, which is located opposite the Jama Masjid. But unfortunately, it is also made out of white marble. It is even more intricate in carvings, but unfortunately, it collapsed after 200 years of its demise, and you see only a shattered ruins today of Mahmud Khilji one's tomb. He also completed the Jama Masjid, which was initiated by his predecessor Hosang Shah. And Mahmud was succeeded by Ghiyahuddin Khalji, a man of leisure. He spent most of his time in leisure activities, and he was a fun-seeking king. And one of the important things, the major architectural development took place during the time of Ghiyahuddin Khalji, and he ruled for a very long time of 31 years. So, one of the major contributions made by Ghiyahuddin Khalji is, of course, the Jahaz Mahal, which is an architectural landmark in the entire history of architectural development in India, which is located in, and it's also the pride of Mandu. But besides that, he was also a great fun seeker, as I told just now, and he had commissioned a book called Nimat Nama, which is also considered as the first recipe book in any Sultanate rule in the entire country. So the book is wonderfully illustrated with pre-Mughal miniature paintings, and it talks about different recipes. Like for example, the samosa, which is widely eaten in India today. It is widely sold, and throughout India, it is a major snacks. So that you have the recipe of making samosa at in Nimat Nama. That is the first recipe book written anywhere in India in the Islamic during the Islamic rule. Nasruddin's rule was short-lived. He was succeeded by another sultan called Mahmud Khalji II, but this was the time of a lot of conflict and disturbance. During the time of Mahmud Khalji II, a Rajput chief called Medina Rai had become very, very powerful during his tenure, and he had become so powerful that Sultan Mahmud Khalji II had to take refuge at Gujarat, and he was finally murdered by the next Gujarat king, who did not like his father's friendship with him. So now Malwa was annexed by Gujarat till 1534 CE. Again, Malwa was conquered by Humayun in 1534 CE, freeing it from Gujarat's hold. During Sher Shah rule, Shuja Khan, a soldier, was appointed as the new governor of Malwa. On the death of Shuja Khan, Malik Bayazid crowned himself as the independent ruler of Malwa in 1555 CE. He ruled till 1561 before surrendering to Akbar in 1562 CE. Malik Bayazid is also known popularly as Baz Bahadur, and he is widely known in India for his romantic love with Rani Rukmati, and which is actually the synonym with Mandu. People identify Mandu with Baz Bahadur and Rukmati's romantic love story. Now let's come to Mandu Fort, which was the main capital. So Mandu Fort is located in a geographically strategic place surrounded by deep ravine of Kakra Ko on the east and west and sloping down towards the south in the Nimar plain. So if you walk through the plateau of Mandu, you'll see very rich black cotton soil, and when you get down of descent from the plateau towards the river Narmada, all of a sudden the landscape changes. It becomes very red. The soil becomes red, and that is how the Nimar plain is. And today, in a clear sky day, from the top of Rani Rukmati's pavilion, you can see even Narmada river. So in the north, where the ravine is not much steep, the builders of Mandu had set up a long line of arched parapets at the crest of the hill, along with gateways and bastions at various vulnerable points. So that is mainly to defend the city or the capital from the conquest of Mughal army or any other armies. So that is how they had built a large fortification. So when we talk about Mandu Fort, there are a series of gates through which one can enter to the citadel of Mandu Fort. So Alamgir Darwaza is the first entrance to Mandu Fort from Dhar. When you are coming from Dhar, the first entrance to the Mandu Fort is the Alamgir Darwaza. Again, if you proceed further from Alamgir Darwaza, is the second entrance is the called Bhangi Darwaza, which is actually named after a Bhangi, who is a scheduled caste, who was sacrificed when the gate was established. That is in the folklore of the region. Historically, how far it is true, it is not clear, but it is as per the folklore. Bhangi woman was sacrificed after the gateway was built. So that is why it is called Bhangi Darwaza. The gateway is built in the pillar and lintel style and is probably of Hindu origin. That is what some of the historians claim. The third one is Delhi Darwaza, that is the next gate, which was the principal entrance to the fort. And the main attraction of this gate is the horseshoe-shaped arches. Now we will concentrate on mosques and tombs. When we talk about tombs and mosques, the first one of Malwa Sultanate was not built at Mandu, but it was built at their earlier capital, established by Dilawar Khan. It's called Dhar. It is at Dhar. It is called Bhojsala and Lat Masjid. They were the first masjids or mosque, religious shrines to be built by the Malwa Sultanate in Malwa. So one of the earliest mosques from the time of Dilawar Khan is the Bhojsala at Dhar, which was actually at the time of Parmar rules of Raja Bhoj. It was a major learning center for Sanskrit, which was converted into a mosque by Dilawar Khan after he established power, in the Malwa region. So the columns, if you see, used in this Bhojsala as well as also Lat Masjid, that is again in Dhar. You have they are actually Hindu temple, the remains of Hindu temple ruin columns. They have been reused, but the arches, which is again a horseshoe, and also the domes, they are of typical Islamic fashion. So these two mosques, which are the earliest ones of Malwa Sultanate creations, they are actually reflection of both Hindu as well as Muslim architectural styles. They are fusion of two architectural styles. Then Dilawar Khan also built a mosque at Mandu, which was built in 1405 CE. This is also the earliest mosque in Mandu. And it was also like what we have at Bhosala and Lat Masjid at Dhar. It was also same, made out of reused material from Hindu temples. You have long colonnades lines in the north and south side of the open courtyard. The first thing that draws to our attention is the tomb of Hoshang-Shah, uh, which is the first tomb built entirely out of white marble stone. And at the four corners dome turrets which are conical in shape. The finial of the dome is crowned with a crescent, which according to D.R. Patil is a feature which seems to have been incorporated to Mandu direct from Mesopotamia or Persia. But you have also a colors in the finial, so that is a continuation, that is an adaptation of Hindu practice. This is also located in a garden. It's the first garden tomb in Malwa. The mausoleum of Hoshang-Shah is built in a square marble platform. The platform bears a delicate ornamental border with projecting lobes, a feature from Hindu architecture. The interior of the mausoleum is square, measuring 15 meters on each side, which is transformed into an octagon by arches about 9-meter height. Jami Masjid was also started by Hoshang-Shah, and it is also the grandest monument of Malwa, but it was completed by Mahmud Khulji in 1454 CE. The Jami Masjid of Mandu stands on a plinth that is 4.6 meter above ground level. A flight of steps lead to the grand entrance porch of the mosque, which is again unique. And the entire structure was modeled after the mosque of Damascus. The domed hall also has delicate jali screens and an exclusive band of blue stars above the windows. The blue stars are again, the reflection of Persian traditions, the influence from Persia, which we see in Indian architecture. The western gateway of the porch leads to a large courtyard, very spacious courtyard, enclosed on three sides by colonnaded verandas covered with domes. The prayer hall has 58 small domes and 3 large domes. The mihrab is decorated with verses from Quran in calligraphy. At the farthest end of the prayer hall are upper apartments which were once meant for ladies and royal visitors. Tomb of Mahmud Khilji is just opposite the Jami Masjid, which was again built entirely of marble. Unfortunately, it is lost because after 200 years of the demise of Mahmud Khilji, it was also it had crumbled down. So we see only today the ruins of this beautiful tomb, and the porch of the tomb is the most elegant among the entire Mandu series, which which stands on a very high plinth along with the ruins of the tomb. It is built of ivory white facade of which is lit by bands of panels of black and yellow stone. So this makes a very unique color compositions when we talk about the facades of any Islamic monuments in India. There are 3 openings of the porch. When the tomb was built, it had 3 openings on each side, the middle one being the loftier than the other 2. The carving and calligraphic devices are of very high order, and it appears that specific Persian artisans were engaged for the ornamentation of the tomb. Excavation was also carried out in these tomb by John Marshall in last century. He had discovered several graves, the middle one being that of Mahmud, which has got interesting calligraphy and also carvings. When we talk about mosque, Malik Mughith Mosque, it also comes to our mind. It is also one of the earliest in Mandu. It's also best preserved. It is located on the eastern bank of the Sagar Talab. This was built in 1452 CE, that is in the middle of the 15th century, by Malik Mughith. He was the father of Mahmud Khilji. This mosque also has a projecting entrance porch, which is the main feature, of course. It has beautiful arched doors and windows. Once the entire porch was covered profusely with floral decorations and blue tiles. Only traces are seen today. Then you have the Darya Khan Mosque, group of mosques and tombs, which is a small group of monuments, scattered monuments, and they are located to the north of the Sagar Talab. The tomb of Darya Khan, who was an high official in the courts of Mahmud Khalji too, was built in the early 16th century. Though built in red sandstone, it has remarkable resemblance with the marble mausoleums of Hosang Shah's tombs. It shows a lot of similarities with Hosang Shah's tombs, but it is made out of red sandstones. Now, once we have seen the tombs and mosques of Mandu of the Malwa rule, now the most important edifice or iconic monument in the entire Mandu is the Jahaz Mahal, which was built like a floating ship, uh, and on its both sides you have two talabs or water bodies. The one on the front is the Kapur Talab, and on the back side it is the Moons Talab. So it appears like a floating ship, and it is of 110-meter length and 15-meter breadth. So there are three projecting balconies on the which overlook the talabs, and each has interesting or unique features of carving and covered with blue tiles. Once they were covered with blue tiles, and they rise to a height of 9.7 meter. The interior of the Jahaz Mahal can be approached through a recessed arched marble gateway at the middle of the eastern wall, and once you are inside you see long corridors. So on the northern end of the corridor you have a large tortoise shaped pool, which is again unique in architectural design. It had the capacity of 30,000 liters of water, and water actually was brought here from a Bawdi which was built next to the Jahaz Mahal, and through a series of aqueducts and pipes, and it was filled, and this was uniquely used for the amusement of the royal women and of Ghiatuddin, and also for his own personal pleasure. And there is another pool to the on the southeast corner, which is again connected with a spiral aqueduct. Again, it's only of its kind. The role of the spiral aqueduct was to control the flow of water. So water was first lifted to the terrace of Jahaz Mahal and then supplied through a series of aqueducts to the various pleasure pools. So this can be seen at Jahaz Mahal, and this makes Jahaz Mahal as one of the unique monuments in the entire architectural series of Mandu, not only in Mandu but in the entire country. When we talk about water related monuments, then the second one comes is the Champa Bawdi, which was again built as a pleasure pool by Ghiatuddin. This is located to the northeast of Moons Talab, and it is actually it was fed with water by a chain of subterranean aquifers connected with Moons Talab. There are inner compartments where where the royal members of the dynasty, including Ghiatuddin and his harem women, they would spend time during the peak summer because of its underground structure. So it was and connected to the water bodies. Even at the height of summer, it was kept cool, and it was definitely it was very comforting for to get relief from the heat. Next to the Champa Bawdi is a hammam. Only the partial it has remained, and the rest is gone with the ravages of time. This hammam was connected again with Champa Bawdi and also these two talabs, and it was getting both hot and cold water. The most impressive feature you see is the stray ceilings, in which beautiful star-like shapes are hewed for light to pass through. So that is the unique feature of this hammam, which has again made Mandu, a special place in the context of water bodies, water architecture in the entire country. Then you have the Jal Mahal, which is next to a large area which was dedicated for pleasure activities, there are a series of pools of various size, all connected with spiral aqueducts and different kind of aqueducts, and they were filled with water. And in the monsoon, it was used maximum for the pleasure. There are steps which lead to these pools, and it would have created a magical aura during the monsoon, and that is how Mandu was celebrated as the city of joy. And even today, it becomes so cheerful. If you go in the monsoon season, it looks so beautiful, which makes Mandu heavenly during the monsoon. And when we talk about Baudis or the water bodies, there is another one called Ujala Baudi, which is located close to Jahaz Mahal. And it's one of the finest Baulis in the country, and also very, very deep. It is a three-tiered structure, 265 feet deep, and surrounded by arched niches. Inside the Bauli are a number of arcades and landing for the convenience of water carriers. At the northern tip is a water rift. You have also Andheri Baudi, which is a closed Baudi next to the Ujala Baudi. It is surrounded by a corridor with a dome in the center of the roof. Now, coming to Baj Bahadur, who was known for his epic romance with Rupmati, there is a palace named after him, which is located 6 kilometers to the towards the Nimot plain on the hilltop, and it has got a very interesting blend of Rajput and Mughal architectures. In the courtyard, you have a large pool which appears like a baudi, and that shows that how water played a very important role in designing the architectural edifices of Mandu. Water was actually central to most of the Mandu monuments. And finally is the Rani Rupmati Mahal, which is on the top, on the summit of the hill. But actually it was not Rani Rupmati's Mahal, though there is the folklore which talk about that when Rani Rupmati was proposed by Baj Bahadur to marry, she said that she needs to be, worship Narmada, and for which a palace had to be built from where she could actually have a darshan, or she could actually see Narmada on daily basis, and she could offer her prayer. So the palace was built, but actually it was a barrack which has nothing to do with Rani Rupmati's palace, though it is called Rani Rupmati's palace in the local legend. So it was a barrack which was located strategically in one of the summits of Mandu Hills, from where you could see the activities of enemies, and accordingly you can strategize your position. So that is how it was meant for. Now the summary. So Mandu, when we talk about the architecture of Mandu, which had different dynasties to rule, and each dynasty had left its imprint, footprints in architectural, architectural activities, and all of them are unique in their own ways. And for example, when we discussed about Hosang Shah's tomb, it is so elegant and so beautiful that it became a model for Taj Mahal. So it is the first of its kind. You have unique blend of stones which you will not find anywhere else except the Mughal monuments. You have white marble, you have yellow, you have black. So all these things have been combined. So it became a major provincial style of Indo-Islamic architectures before the Mughal rule, and even Akbar was highly influenced by the architectural tradition of Mandu, and later, of course, Shah Jahan and Jahangir, they were influenced. So this, what you see in Agra and Delhi were basically a fusion of Gujarat, Malwa and Bengal architectural style along with Rajput. So that is how this architecture of Malwa played a very important role in the later period of Mughal for creating some of the most intricate buildings and beautiful splendid buildings for which India is widely known. So this is what is the summary of Mandu. And secondly, if you want a further informations, we have a very elaborate note on how Mandu was celebrated as city of joy, and each sultan how he had contributed immensely for architectural and in other aspects as well. So and then there are also references, there are also interesting stories about Mandu. So so all these are there in the note, and that will also help. So thank you a lot for being patient to listen about the architecture of Malwa Sultanate.